sending your money and sending your ideas will bring a return, because New Zealanders have ingenuity, New Zealanders are hard-working, and New Zealanders are ambitious for their own country. However, while IKEA is a great success story of overseas investment, we should be wary that it is in large part the exception. New Zealand has been ranked by the OECD as 34th out of 34 for our openness to overseas investment. In terms of the amount of foreign direct investment in the economy, we are 26th out of 34, and when we close the doors to people sending their money and their ideas to our country, that limits the opportunities for more higher paying jobs and better services for New Zealanders. And that's why I'm announcing today on behalf of the government that Cabinet has agreed by the end of this year we will be substantially reforming the Overseas Investment Act to make New Zealand a place more open and welcoming to our friends around the world sending their money and their ideas to supercharge the New Zealand economy, improve pay, improve jobs and improve services for consumers. In particular, we will be reversing the presumption in the Overseas Investment Act that it is a privilege to invest in New Zealand. No other country says that it's a privilege to invest in their country. Most countries see it as a sign of strength and a vote of confidence that people would want to send their money and their ideas to their economy. Reversing that presumption will simplify the series of tests that are required, and for most investment applications we expect that within 15 working days they will have a yes to sending their money here, to sending their ideas and placing a bet on the future of the New Zealand economy that is positive. There will be, of course, some exemptions. While we welcome overseas investment, there are always risks around national security and public order. Those will remain in place. If there's any suspicion that an investment could have, for example, an effect on our national security, that it could be involved in a strategically important business, or that the investor may be exposed to ownership by a foreign government, then there will continue to be a longer national interest test. Farmland, residential housing and fishing quota will also remain on the usual national interest test. However, the tests for people who are making uncontroversial investments, sending their money, sending their ideas without any suspicion of threat to national public order or safety, those will be processed within 15 days under the new law. This represents New Zealand standing proudly in the world, being proud that people would want to invest in New Zealand businesses and New Zealand property, and it represents a change in belief from the suspicion that people who want to do business with us are somehow up to something, to a pride that actually New Zealand is now seen as a place that is worthy of investment and has a great future for the people who choose to make their home here and those who choose to invest here. The legislation is currently being drafted by the Parliamentary Council Office. Once that is done and it gets final Cabinet sign-off, it will be introduced to Parliament, most likely in the first half of this year, and the Cabinet has agreed it's a priority for the government to have that legislation in place by the end of 2025. That's really the key details, but there may be more things that you'd like to drill into, and really happy to take any questions.
Yeah, David, you talk about the making decisions in 15 days as part of this legislation. What's the current status quo of businesses, overseas businesses who do want to set up shop?
At the moment there's a statutory limit of 70 days. We have managed to get that down to 35. I issued a ministerial directive letter when I first got this job a year ago and said, look, we want you to do it in half that. 96% of consents since I issued that letter have been done in 35 days or less. 100% have been done within 70 days. However, the real issue here is, what is our stance? If you're looking at New Zealand, you've got a number of investments around the world, and these kinds of people often do. We want to be first up, best dressed, that if you've got a good idea, the government is not going to unnecessarily stand in your way.
We've seen a lot of focus on breaking up the supermarket geography as well, obviously. Costco now in New Zealand, will this legislation make it easier for potential supermarket players to come here as well?
Absolutely. If you're a supermarket and you want to come to New Zealand, overseas investment is not going to be a barrier to you. The government is committed to working across a number of other areas, such as the Resource Management Act, which of course forestalled IKEA for nearly 15 years. However, overseas investment will not be a barrier to people who want to come and compete with the supermarket chains and drive prices down.
Policy document does talk about, I guess, some of the risks of overseas investments. What are some of the potential risks?
Well, when I talk to colleagues in other Five Eyes countries, they're particularly concerned about investment in what they call dual-use technologies that might also have a military purpose. They talk about strategically important businesses, for example, critical infrastructure, the use or misuse of which could make it harder for the New Zealand economy to operate. So there will still be a long track, if you like, or a slower track where we're concerned about our national security or public order. However, outside of farmland fisheries and residential housing, we will be saying if you're not posing a threat to anyone and you've got a willing buyer and a willing seller, then come on in.
Would the Act like to see more around residential farmland and fishing quotas?
Well, I'm speaking on behalf of the government, and the government position is that we have decided to fast-track everything but those things. If you want to ask my view, I would say, look, in terms of fishing quota, it's not going to make a big difference to have more people bidding up what is a finite number of property rights to fish. There's only so many fish, there's only so much quota. You could have the price of that bid up, but it's not really going to change the game. When it comes to residential housing, there's a coalition agreement around that. We respect that, just as we expect our coalition partners to respect our commitments in those documents. And then when it comes to farmland, there is clearly a close attachment to farmland. It's a part of the New Zealand psyche, so you can understand why people would be resistant to that. However, equally, there will always be people who will say, look, I've worked hard building up my farm, it's my blood, sweat and tears that went into it, I should be able to sell it. So there will be people who will argue both ways, but I think where the government's got to is going to allow a supercharging of investment into innovative businesses, new businesses, things that actually make life better, like IKEA, and that is a big sea change in New Zealand's outlook to the world.
As a senior minister, are you able to give us any update on the situation with the Chinese warships? Has there been any developments in the last 12 to 24 hours?
Look, the last I've heard, I'm unaware that there have been any changes in the last 12 to 24 hours. What I do know is, and it's been stated, the People's Liberation Army Navy is not breaking any international law. They're giving notice of any live firing exercises that may be observed. The thing that I think is causing alarm for some people is the location of those exercises and the relatively short notice that they've been given. They are allowed to do it. I think, if anything, it underpins for the New Zealand public that we do need greater investment in our defence. The whole environment is becoming more strategically competitive in the Indo-Pacific, and I'm pleased to say that this government is made up of three parties, all of whom are committed to more defence investment, and you'll see more of that as the budget approaches in May. All right, well, look, with a bit of luck, people will look back on this as a time when New Zealand pivoted from being leery of overseas investors to welcoming them, because we can see that investment of money and ideas is good for growth, it's good for jobs, it's good for higher paying jobs. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, guys.